What inspired me to get into science, I think primarily trying to figure out how things work. And there's a fascination I've always had for how microbes work. And as the genome sequences became available, it became clear to me that the information for how they work is in the DNA. And decoding the information would be a way to get at some of the answers that I've always been curious about. Just in general, I think I have been drawn towards things that have some artistic component to it, and biological systems are always just have beautiful radial symmetry and bilateral symmetry, and there's something about their appearance that is always fascinating. But science is bigger than just your own fascination. I think it is, in the end, solving problems that are of consequence to other people's lives, improving the quality of life of people by understanding how diseases, the mechanisms underlying diseases, and figuring out treatments or cures and so on. Climate change is another example where there's many problems that need to be figured out to understand consequences of climate change and what we can do to be responsible citizens and to enable a sustainable environment. So a lot of times the challenge is to connect your fascination for understanding how things work with the impact of solving that problem to some bigger issue. And that is a changing landscape, because in the end, the funding environment and everything that is happening around you impacts what is important. And so as a scientist, you always have to connect your day-to-day activities to issues of high importance to the general public. And I think that's a responsibility of all scientists. I think we have to, in the end, remember that we're doing this for the greater good and not just to satisfy our own fancies. Science is hard. I think it goes without saying. Experiments fail, grants get rejected, papers get rejected. Sometimes your hypotheses are wrong, but that's a part of the process. I think one thing we have to make sure is when we train students is to make them appreciate through practice that science is hard, but at the same time, science is rewarding. I think when you are able to solve a big problem, because it is so hard, when you are able to eventually solve it, the returns on investment are great. But you can easily get lost in some of these valleys of depression when things don't work. And I think the way to overcome those challenges is to have a perspective of the bigger picture. And often you need to step back away from those day-to-day problems and recognize that it's just one small step towards a much bigger goal. And working in teams also helps, and it helps you solve problems better, have a fresh look at the same problem from different perspectives. And so ISP, in a way, for me, has been a breath of fresh air, because I can interact with aeronautic engineers or oceanographers in the same building, and they're all interested by the same problems. So they have different perspectives, and often when things fail, you may get answers from a very different perspective that you had never even thought about. And so one way to stay above all of the noise of failure is to keep an eye out for the big issues that you're trying to address.